Today is the 1st December 2022. We are doing this since 2014 up to 2028 as prospect, and since 2028 doing things as risk report. We will observe and review that the crosscut between different areas indeed will lead to the risk behavior. The risk behavior is a common trace of both areas qualified by risk. Indeed, is something corrosive. Can be applied as corrosive argument in any kind of function inside your system, and considering system a structure of property with specific attributes that in general should avoid this kind of thing, which is the risk. And going inside an array, indeed this will going as an array, this will be inside a systemic mobilization as matrix, which indeed puts the combination of arrays by lines and columns evidenced by the loss of integrity as line and columns. And if I have the loss of integrity as my matrix considering line and columns, indeed I'm forming a structural matrix from the array as failure inside my system. Indeed was observed, and we could have that the tolerance with the failure starts in a very first moment with the control. And the control is a human resource hired by someone, and in the same way the contract is hired by someone, and this going as hierarchical thing leads to the top. And the top-down scheme will affect sometimes serious system like security, defense, the justice, and you will probably have misuse of your functions. We could observe that the taxonomy as evaluation and analysis modified by guiltiness, observe the complexity of behavior as risk, will point to the loss of integrity until a new purpose, sometimes against your institution, and the conformance of this, and it's kind of the idea as criminal conjuncture. The attempt running at the electoral system allow to get the institutional power. The first purpose for sure is the treasury, public, with incomes kind of a perpetual income as taxation, and the use as overpriced contracts and others observed during all those years, at least the ninth Operation Third Wheel Review, there's Law and Order Review. Failures at the top starts at the top. An integrated failure inside an institution coming from the top starts at the top. The solution and troubleshoot must kick there. Government, corporate area, society failures inside, loss of integrity as intention, which sometimes is against the mission, the purpose, the statement, the constitution, will affect premises and establishment issues under accreditation, especially on financial area, will affect the fiduciary argument, which is a mandatory need of the bank system. When you put your money at the bank, indeed, the bank is not the owner of your money. The bank is kind of giving you a service, which is hold your money. And you obtain kind of gains by this, which is the behavior of the money on time. In general, on mathematical financial math, we have this behavior of the money. If you take a look on our blog, the risk report 2022 tracenovember.blogspot.com, we will upload this at this blog, and unfortunately have the December. You observe that the interference are reported, and since 2014 is harassment, because you stalk, you tease, you harass. And violations, secret rules, patents, protocols, data, business intelligence, asset, industrial secret, core business of activity even under development, affected third interests, all regular work made, professional life, private circles, and others. Sometimes you expose the life of others, things like this. We could observe in the same way that you had the Western white collar crime, the Eastern white collar crime. They are talking the middle level. You will have lasting only the trust. The trust is an euphemism for mafia. The antitrust justice is an euphemism for anti-mafia justice and jurisdiction with procedure, protocols, a lot of things. In general, the mafia will be formed by the criminal affection between corporate area, public area, misguiding both as observing the model as the risk. You can circle this kind of activity in many areas. Can be at the sports, can be at the show business, but in general, we will have some common traces as exploitation, misuse of all things, loss of capacity and integrity inside the regular field and institution to operate the standard patterns of control and a lot of things. Of course, that you deny. In the same way you did all things of your entire life, including trying to blame the research, but you are a fraud. You are in the opposite side of this charge, right, offenders? You will check that the first subject we had at the show business was trace the financial centers, Europe, Asia, Europe, Americas, using one specific procedure ranking, having the ranking list by IoT, and observing that you can have the geolocation and instruments crossing with credit card information and banks, reducing the possibility as keep lying, and evidencing the obstruction of justice, covering all crimes. Indeed, the obstruction of justice is the modified data and the migration of modified data to change the reality. And the reality of an asset, a lot of things we put on Asia, kind of weak dollars, and hot an asset. Property ham, the asset as fixed asset, or a box with items at the e-commerce will kind of have the history and the information about the asset. So I can research this by values equally qualified, very similar with the patterness, behavior and guiltiness that we have. And this asset must be measured by an authority, but has value. And will kind of have maybe the conflict of interest. And will self-dealing and a lot of things, and one reason to have them as authority doing this on Asia, at least identified by silent procedures. And the second moment we will have at the show business, the first one we could identify the financial centers, the banks and operators in general observed, and how this will be qualified as corrosive argument at the show business. And then we will check that the drug dependence is a problem that affects many artists or all of them. And you observe that the time will pass, the age will pass, and the addiction will got deeper. And your health is kind of, you will be reduced. So you probably will have a collapse or drop dead or OD or something like this, and must be avoided. The drug user as artist or sports player at dependence knows the dealers. The dealers knows who is supplying their need as financial need. As investment, we cycle the thing as a evil business cycle, considering criminal investment, criminal results, and this engineer of disgrace and destruction. Some artists and some sports players must be, or indeed are inside a witness protection program. This kind of activity can finance paramilitary, institutional corruption, Even electoral crimes and frauds, considering the chairs occupying, got filled by this kind of procedure will, of course, feed and keep the continuity of this kind of things. And we observe that some kind of offers that they show business as evil and underground will lead maybe probably to torture, murder, sexual exploitation, rapers and things like this, big disgrace. And you now must understand that you got the financial centers, you got the financial institutions, you got that has a financial workflow, and once in a while linked with the institutional corruption and public corruption. Now, probably we will be told that this kind of activity is part of the show business as a prank or ritual or something like this, but it's not. It's the transnational organized crime committing crimes and using this in most all cases by exploitation and suppression. Oppression. And you now must get the agencies and the agents to understand which kind of corrosive activity, argument, or stimulus had been, circling the show business, and after this, you probably will have the entire structure as risk activity at the show business segmented, qualified, and individualized by financial centers, financial institutions, and agencies, entities and agents as operators of this. If all is qualified as a risk activity with the perception as something corrosive, indeed you had the organization. Organization by systemically fail, structure, which implies the bank system and the finance activity, the structure by agencies as entities, and the operational level as operators, all at risk activity as corrosive. It's named organized crime inside the show business. The second part of this activity is made, offered, and the ball is with you. The silence can be a crime. Have a great December. It's Christmas.